Olivia Hart sat curled up on her worn velvet couch, the glow of her laptop reflecting off her tired eyes. Outside her Brooklyn apartment, the city hummed with its usual Friday night energy, but inside, everything felt still. She had just finished a grueling week at Sterling Enterprises, where she worked as a marketing coordinator, constantly racing against impossible deadlines. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca, her sister who was studying abroad in Paris. Haven't seen your face in forever. Send me a photo so I know you're still alive and not just a corporate zombie. Olivia laughed softly, shaking her head. Rebecca always knew how to lighten the mood. She glanced at herself in the mirror across the room. Her chestnut hair fell loosely around her shoulders, and she wore a simple cream sweater that made her hazel eyes stand out. For once, she looked relaxed, genuinely happy. She angled her phone to capture the soft lamplight, smiled warmly, and snapped a photo. Without thinking too much, she typed a quick message. Still human, barely. Miss you tons. Her thumb hovered over the send button for just a moment before she tapped it. Then set her phone down to make tea. The horrible realization 3 minutes later, her phone lit up with a notification. Olivia picked it up casually, expecting a playful response from Rebecca. Instead, her blood turned cold. The message had gone to Nathan Sterling, her boss, CEO, the man whose icy professionalism had become legendary throughout the company. The man who had never smiled in a meeting, who measured every word, who expected perfection from everyone around him. Olivia's hands began to shake. She stared at the screen in disbelief. How could this have happened? She opened her contacts with trembling fingers and saw the cruel truth. Rebecca Sterling was listed right above Nathan Sterling in her recent messages. One tiny slip, one moment of inattention, and she had sent her CEO a casual, warm photo meant for family. Her mind raced through every possible disaster. Would he think she was unprofessional? Inappropriate? No, would this be grounds for dismissal? She had worked so hard to build her reputation at Sterling Enterprises, climbing from an intern to a coordinator in just 3 years. And now, one mistake might destroy everything. The sleepless night Olivia paced her small apartment, her tea growing cold on the counter. She drafted and deleted a dozen apology messages. Each one felt worse than the last. Mr. Sterling, I sincerely apologize for the inappropriate message. Delete. That photo was meant for my sister. Please disregard. Delete. I made a terrible mistake. Delete. Nothing felt right. Apologizing would draw attention to it. Ignoring it felt equally wrong. She imagined Monday morning walking into the sleek glass building, riding the elevator to the 15th floor, where Nathan's corner office overlooked the Manhattan skyline. Would he call her in immediately? Would security escort her out? She collapsed onto her couch, staring at the ceiling. Nathan Sterling was not just her boss. He was a legend in the business world. At 35, he had transformed his family's struggling company into a multi-billion-dollar empire. People whispered about his brilliance, his ruthlessness, his complete dedication to success above all else. Olivia had seen him exactly 3 times in person. Once during her interview, where his piercing blue eyes had studied her so intensely, she felt transparent. Once in the elevator, where he had nodded politely without a word. And once during a company presentation, where he had dismantled a senior executive's proposal with surgical precision. He was untouchable, unreachable, and she had just sent him a cozy, personal photo with a message full of warmth. Monday morning. Arrives the weekend crawled by in agonizing slow motion. Olivia barely slept, barely ate. She rehearsed explanations in her head, prepared for the worst. By Monday morning, dark circles shadowed her eyes despite her careful makeup. She arrived at Sterling Enterprises 30 minutes early, hoping to settle her nerves before facing whatever awaited her. The building's lobby gleamed with marble and chrome, a testament to the company's success. Olivia rode the elevator in silence, her reflection staring back at her from the polished doors at her desk. She logged into her computer with shaking hands. Her friend Julia Chen rolled her chair over, concern etched on her face. You look awful. What happened this weekend? Olivia forced a smile. Just tired. Big project coming up. Julia narrowed her eyes but didn't push. She'd been Olivia's closest friend at the company, one person who understood the pressure they all worked under. The morning progressed with agonizing normalcy. Emails arrived, meetings happened. Olivia kept glancing at her phone, expecting a summons from Nathan's office. That never came. Well, maybe he hadn't seen it. Maybe he had deleted it without a second thought. The unexpected call at 2 in the afternoon. Her desk phone rang. The internal number on the display made her heart stop. Nathan. Sterling's office. Olivia's hand trembled as she picked up the receiver. Olivia Hart speaking. Ms. Hart, this is Elizabeth from Mr. Sterling's office. He would like to see you at 3 o'clock. Please bring the Morrison campaign files. The line went dead before Olivia could respond. She sat frozen, her mind blank. With panic, Julia noticed immediately. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost? Nathan Sterling wants to see me. In his office? In 45 minutes. Julia's eyes widened. About what? Olivia couldn't tell her. Couldn't admit the stupid mistake that might cost her everything. The Morrison campaign, apparently. But she knew better. This was about the photo. It had to be. She gathered the Morrison files with mechanical movements, her mind racing through every possible scenario. Would he fire her quietly? Publicly? Would he lecture her about professionalism? The not knowing felt worse than any actual punishment. As 3 o'clock approached, Olivia stood outside Nathan Sterling's office door, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She raised her hand to knock, took a deep breath, and prepared to face the consequences of one accidental message that had changed everything. Olivia's knuckles rapped against the heavy oak door 3 times. Each knock echoed in the quiet hallway like a countdown to her professional doom. Come in. Nathan Sterling's voice was deep, measured, impossible to read. Olivia pushed open the door and stepped into an office that looked more like a modern art gallery than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black created sharp lines throughout the room. Everything screamed control, precision, wealth. Nathan stood by the window, his back to her hands. Clasped behind him, he wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, his dark hair slightly disheveled, as though he had run his hands through it. For a moment, he didn't move, and Olivia wondered if he had forgotten she was there. Mr. Sterling, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. You asked to see me? He turned slowly, and Olivia's breath caught. She had expected anger, disappointment, cold professionalism. Instead, his blue eyes held something she couldn't quite identify. Curiosity, perhaps? Or amusement? Miss Hart, please sit down. Olivia lowered herself into the leather chair across from his desk, clutching the Morrison files like a shield. Nathan moved to his chair but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against his desk, studying her with an intensity that made her want to disappear. I received an interesting message from you this weekend. Heat flooded Olivia's face. Mr. Sterling, I am so incredibly sorry. That photo was meant for my sister. I made a careless mistake with my contacts, and I completely understand if this is inappropriate or unprofessional. I take full responsibility. The words tumbled out in a rush, desperate and sincere. She braced herself for the lecture, the dismissal, the disappointed shake of his head. Instead, Nathan did something completely unexpected. He smiled. Not a polite business smile, a real one. It transformed his entire face, softening the sharp angles, reaching his eyes in a way that made him look years younger. Do you know how many messages I receive each day, Miss Hart? Olivia shook her head, confused by the question. Hundreds. Reports, proposals, complaints, requests. Every single one carefully worded, strategically timed, designed to impress or manipulate, or convince me of something. He paused, his gaze never leaving hers. Your message was the first genuine thing I've received in months. An honest conversation. Olivia stared at him, completely lost. This was not how she had imagined this conversation going. I don't understand, sir. Nathan moved around his desk and sat down, his posture relaxing in a way she had never seen before. That photo showed me something real. A person who wasn't performing, wasn't trying to be anything other than themselves. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? But it was a mistake, Olivia protested weakly. The best things often are. He picked up his phone from the desk, glanced at it briefly, then set it down. Tell me about your sister, Rebecca. Isn't it? The message mentioned missing her. The shift in conversation threw Olivia completely off balance. She's studying art history in Paris. This is her second year abroad. You're close. It wasn't a question, but Olivia answered anyway. Very. After our father died, it was just the three of us. My mother, Rebecca, and me. We learned to rely on each other. Nathan nodded slowly, something flickering across his face. Understanding, maybe, or recognition? Family can be complicated. Mine certainly is. Olivia knew the basics. Nathan's father, Richard Sterling, was a notorious businessman who had built the company through aggressive tactics and iron control. The newspapers loved to write about the Sterling family drama, the pressure, the expectations. The Morrison campaign, Nathan said suddenly, gesturing to the files in her lap. I've been reviewing your work on it. Innovative approach, bold choices, not what I expected from someone in your position. Olivia's heart lifted slightly. Thank you, sir. I tried to think outside the traditional framework. It's exactly what we need. Stood, walking back to the window. Miss Hart, I'm going to be honest with you. That photo you sent made me realize something. I've surrounded myself with people who tell me what they think I want to hear. People who perform rather than exist, and I'm tired of it. He turned back. To face her, his expression serious but open. I'd like to get to know the real Olivia Hart, the one who sends warm messages to her sister, the one who isn't afraid to take creative risks. Not as your boss, but as someone who could use a reminder of what genuine connection looks like. The dangerous territory. Olivia's mind reeled. Was Nathan Sterling actually asking to be friends? Was this some kind of test? She searched his face for signs of manipulation, but found only sincerity. I'm not sure that's appropriate, Mr. Sterling. Nathan, he corrected gently. And you're probably right. It isn't appropriate, but I'm asking anyway. The silence stretched between them, filled with possibility and danger in equal measure. Olivia thought of her career, her reputation, everything she had worked for. Then she thought of the loneliness she had seen in his eyes, a mirror of her own. What exactly are you suggesting? She asked carefully. Nathan returned to his chair, leaning forward with his elbows on the desk. Coffee, lunch, conversations that aren't about quarterly reports or marketing strategies. A chance to be two people instead of CEO and employee. People would talk. People always talk. His voice was firm but not dismissive. But we could be discreet. Professional boundaries at work, something different outside of it. Olivia knew she should say no. Every logical part of her brain screamed warnings. But there was something in Nathan's honesty, in his willingness to acknowledge the complications that made her pause. I need time to think about this. Nathan nodded, no disappointment in his expression. Of course. Take all the time you need. And Olivia, regardless of your decision, your job is secure. This conversation changes nothing professionally unless you want it to. Julia's concerns back at her desk. Olivia sat in stunned silence. Julia appeared within minutes, as though she had sensed the emotional earthquake. Well, did he fire you? Demote you? What happened? Olivia looked at her friend, unsure how much to reveal. He wants to have coffee with me, outside of work.
House.
Julia's eyes widened. Nathan Sterling asked you on a date? Not a date, just coffee. As friends, I think. Even as she said it, Olivia wasn't entirely sure that was true. Julia pulled her chair closer, lowering her voice. Olivia, be careful. I've worked here for 5 years. You've seen people get close to Nathan and get hurt. Not because he's cruel, but because his world is complicated. His father controls so much of this company. The board watches his every move. And you're not from that world? I know, Olivia whispered. Believe me, I know all the reasons this is a terrible idea, but Olivia thought of Nathan's smile, the vulnerability in his eyes when he talked about wanting something genuine. But maybe terrible ideas are worth considering sometimes. Julia sighed, squeezing Olivia's hand. Just promise me you'll protect yourself. Don't lose who you are trying to fit into his life. The message that evening, Olivia sat in her apartment, staring at her phone. Nathan's number was saved in her contacts, staring back at her like a challenge. She had spent hours weighing the decision, listing pros and cons, trying to think rationally. But rationality had limits. Sometimes the heart needed a voice too. She typed carefully, reading and rereading before sending. Coffee sounds nice, but I have conditions. We keep work and personal completely separate. If this becomes complicated, we stop. And you have to. Be honest with me, always. No games, no manipulation. The response came within minutes. Agreed. All of it. There's a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from Midtown. Nobody from our world goes there. Saturday morning, if you're free. Olivia smiled despite herself, despite all the warnings echoing in her head. I'll be there. She set her phone down and walked to her window, looking out at the glittering city. Somewhere out there, Nathan Sterling was probably looking at the same skyline, feeling the same mixture of hope and fear. One accidental photo had opened a door neither of them had expected. Walking through it meant risking everything. But as Olivia stood in the quiet of her apartment, she realized that some risks were worth taking, even the ones that terrified her most. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in golden autumn light. Olivia stood outside the small cafe Nathan had mentioned, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The place was called the Copper Bean, wedged between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop on a quiet Brooklyn street. Through the window, she could see mismatched furniture, local artwork on brick walls, and exactly 0 people in business suits. Nathan was already there, sitting at a corner table. He wore jeans and a simple navy sweater, looking so different from the CEO in tailored suits that Olivia almost didn't recognize him. When he saw her, he stood, and that genuine smile from his office reappeared. He came, he said, relief evident in his voice. I said I would. Olivia slid into the seat across from him, accepting the coffee he had already ordered. Somehow you knew my order.
Yes.
You always get the same thing from the office cafe. Vanilla latte, extra foam. He looked almost embarrassed. I noticed things. Talked for 3 hours. It's not about work, not about business strategies or quarterly goals. Nathan told her about growing up under his father's impossible expectations. It's about the loneliness of always being watched and judged. Olivia shared stories about her mother's strength, about helping Rebecca apply to art schools, about the small apartment that held more love than most mansions. My father thinks emotions are weaknesses, Nathan said quietly, staring into his coffee. He trained me to suppress everything, to see relationships as transactions, connections as leverage. And for years I believed him. What changed? Olivia asked. Nathan looked up, his blue eyes meeting hers with startling honesty. Your photo? It's that simple moment of genuine warmth. It made me realize I've been living half a life. Successful half, certainly, but only half. The growing connection. Weeks that followed brought a strange double existence. At Sterling Enterprises, Olivia and Nathan maintained perfect professionalism. He was Mr. Sterling in meetings, she was Ms. Hart in emails. They never lingered in conversations, never let their eyes meet for too long. But outside those glass walls, something beautiful and terrifying was blooming. They met at quiet cafes, walked through Central Park at dawn when the city still slept, talked until streetlights flickered on. Nathan showed Olivia a world she had only glimpsed from the outside, not through wealth but through his perspective. She showed him the beauty in ordinary moments, the kind of simple joy his life had never allowed. I bought my mother flowers. Yesterday, Nathan told her one evening, as they sat by the fountain in Washington Square Park. Just because, she cried. I can't remember the last time I did something without a strategic reason. Olivia smiled, watching the water catch the fading sunlight. How did it feel? Terrifying, wonderful, real. He turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. You're changing me, Olivia. And I'm grateful, but I'm also scared, because the more real this becomes, the more complicated everything gets. She understood. Julia had noticed. The subtle shifts in Olivia's mood, the way she smiled at her phone, the distraction in her eyes. At work, whispers had started about Nathan's unusually good spirits, his willingness to listen, his moments of unexpected kindness. "We can't hide forever," Olivia said softly. "I know." Nathan's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in the growing darkness. "But I'm not ready to face what comes when people find out. My father, the board, the media, they'll destroy this before we even understand what it is." The confrontation, the breaking point, came on a Tuesday afternoon. Olivia was reviewing campaign materials when Nathan's assistant, Elizabeth, appeared at her desk with an urgent message. "Mr. Sterling needs you in his office immediately. His father's here." Olivia's stomach dropped. Richard Sterling rarely visited the office, preferring to control things from his estate in Connecticut. His presence meant trouble. She knocked on Nathan's door and entered to find two men in the room. Nathan stood by the window, tension visible in every line of his body. Richard Sterling sat in the leather chair, a man in his 60s, with silver hair and eyes like ice chips. "Miss Hart," Richard said, his voice dripping with disdain. "How convenient." Close the door. Olivia obeyed, her heart racing. "Father, leave her out of this," Nathan said sharply. "Leave her out." Richard laughed, a cold sound. "She's the center of it." "Did you think I wouldn't notice? My son, sneaking around with an employee, meeting in cheap cafes like some common fool? You're jeopardizing everything we've built." "How did you?" Nathan started. "I have eyes everywhere. Did you forget who taught you this business?" Richard stood, fixing Olivia with a withering stare. "You're clever, I'll give you that. It's targeting the CEO, working your way into his confidence. But whatever scheme you're running ends now." "It's not a scheme," Olivia said, finding her voice despite the fear. "And I'm not targeting anyone." "Father, you will not speak to her that way," Nathan said, his voice dangerously quiet. Richard turned to his son. "You have a choice, Nathan, in this foolishness, or I'll make sure she's unemployable in this city. I'll destroy her career, her reputation, everything. Is your little romance worth ruining her life?" The impossible decision. Olivia felt the walls closing in. She looked at Nathan and saw the war in his eyes. He wanted to fight, she could see that. But Richard Sterling didn't make empty threats. He had the power to follow through on every word. "I'll resign," Olivia said, the words cutting like glass. "Effective immediately." "This doesn't have to affect anyone else." "Olivia?" "No." Nathan stepped toward her, but she held up a hand. "It's the right choice. For both of us." She looked at Richard. "I'll sign whatever non-disclosure agreements you want. I'll leave quietly. But you leave Nathan alone to run this company the way he sees fit." Richard studied her, surprise flickering across his face. "Smart girl. You understand how the world works." "I understand that some things matter more than careers," Olivia said, "even if you don't." She turned to Nathan, memorizing his face, the pain in his eyes matching her own. "Thank you for showing me what genuine connection feels like. Don't forget it just because I'm gone." She walked out before he could respond, before her composure could shatter. At her desk, she quickly gathered her personal items, ignoring Julia's shocked questions. Within 20 minutes, she was in the elevator, descending away from Sterling Enterprises for the last time. 3 months later, winter had settled over New York. Olivia found work at a smaller marketing firm, a place where she could rebuild without the shadow of scandal. Pay was less, the project smaller, but she had her integrity intact. She hadn't heard from Nathan. No calls, no messages, nothing. She told herself it was better this way, that clean breaks healed faster. But some nights, she still reached for her phone, still thought about typing his name. Rebecca had come home for the holidays, filling the apartment with warmth and distraction. They were decorating the small Christmas tree when Olivia's phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Ms. Hart, this is Elizabeth from Sterling Enterprises. Mr. Sterling would like to see you. There's a car waiting downstairs." Olivia's heart stuttered. "I don't work there anymore, I know. Just this. Once, it's important." Against her better judgment, Olivia grabbed her coat, the revelation the car took her to Richard Sterling's Connecticut estate. A sprawling mansion that spoke of old money and older power. Elizabeth met her at the door, leading her to a study filled with dark wood and leather. Nathan was there, but so was Richard. Both men stood as she entered. "Thank you for coming," Nathan said, his voice rough as though he hadn't slept in days. "I don't understand what's happening," Olivia said. Richard Sterling cleared his throat, and for the first time, he looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Hart, I owe you an apology. A significant one." Olivia stared, certain she had misheard. 3 months ago, I threatened you to protect my son from what I thought was a terrible mistake. Richard's jaw tightened. I was wrong. Watching Nathan these past months, seeing him become a shell of himself, I realized something. It didn't make him weak. You made him human, and that's what he needed. Nathan stepped forward. I tried to let you go. Tried to convince myself my father was right, but every day without you felt like drowning. I'm done living according to other people's rules, even his. He glanced at Richard. We've come to an understanding. He stays out of my personal life, and I continue running the company successfully, which I will, because you taught me that success doesn't mean sacrificing everything that matters. Olivia's hands trembled. Nathan, I don't know what to say. Say you'll give us another chance, a real one this time, out in the open. No hiding, no shame, no fear. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. I love you, Olivia. I should have said it months ago. I should have fought for you then, but I'm fighting now. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. Your world, your life, it's so different from mine. Then we'll build something new, something that belongs to both of us. His thumb brushed away her tears. That accidental photo showed me what was missing in my life. You, real connection, genuine emotion, love that isn't a transaction. I won't lose that again. Olivia looked at Richard, who nodded stiffly. She looked at Nathan, at the hope and fear and love in his eyes. She thought about all the logical reasons to walk away. And then she thought about the feeling that had filled her when they talked for hours in quiet cafes. I love you too, she whispered. I tried not to, but I do. Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she might disappear. Behind them, Richard Sterling quietly left the room, giving them privacy he had never granted before. 6 months. Later, the engagement announcement in the New York Times surprised exactly no one who knew them. Olivia Hart and Nathan Sterling, together at last, building a life that honored both their worlds. Olivia still worked at her marketing firm, refusing Nathan's offers to return to Sterling Enterprises. They were partners, but she needed her own achievements, her own path. He understood, even admired her for it. On their wedding day, small and intimate despite Richard's protests, Rebecca gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. My sister once sent a photo to the wrong person, best mistake she ever made. Nathan squeezed Olivia's hand under the table, his eyes full of everything they had fought to protect. That accidental message had changed everything. It had revealed truth in a world of performance, connection in a life of isolation, love in the most unexpected place. And as Olivia looked at her husband, at the man who had learned to choose love over fear, she knew that some mistakes were actually destiny. Wearing a clever disguise,